Hi, I'm Sarah Otto, and I'm on the pastoral team at Ignatius House. Throughout the Easter season, we hear so much from the Acts of the Apostles in the lectionary. And while the sense of urgency and zeal pulsing through the early Christian community in the days after Jesus' resurrection is inspiring, it can be intimidating, or at least hard to relate to. Just 2 days after Easter Sunday, the first reading was about Peter preaching to the Jewish people on the day of Pentecost. And the reading ends. Those who accepted his message were baptized, and about 3,000 persons were added that day. That's remarkable. That's one sermon on one day. Just think of the ripple effect. No wonder the church grew like rapid fire. Later in that same chapter of Acts, we learn about how they devoted themselves fully to the communal way of life, sharing what they had so no one was in need, praying together, breaking bread together. And that chapter ends, every day the Lord added to their number those who were being saved. Can you even imagine that? My parish baptized 2 new members into the community during the Easter Vigil this year, and that felt like a momentous occasion. But I imagine many parishes didn't have any. My family attended Easter Sunday service outside amidst a community of faith, but then we went home and had our own private celebrations. I read Acts and wonder, how did we get so far from that incredible fervor? As a contrast, today's passage from Hebrews 11 comes toward the end of a letter addressed to a community struggling not from persecution, as the early community certainly did, but simply with a weariness from the demands of Christian life and a growing indifference to their call. The letter as a whole is intended to restore some of the lost fervor we see alive in Acts and strengthen them in their faith. It's a message of encouragement. Over 2,000 years later, we could still use that encouragement. In this third week of Easter, it's important to reflect and ask ourselves, what difference does the resurrection make in my life? Is my life a witness to the incredible Paschal mystery we just walked through only 2 weeks ago? Do I proclaim the good news through a life of joy? Or have I grown weary? This particular passage is just the beginning of a beautiful tribute to the faith of our biblical ancestors. The writer goes through somewhat of a litany of praise for these individuals, saying 20 different times in chapter 11 the words, by faith. By faith, Abel offered to God a sacrifice greater than Cain's. By faith, Enoch was taken up so that he should not see death. By faith, Noah built an ark for the salvation of his household. By faith, Abraham obeyed. By faith, by faith, by faith. We hear about the inner conviction and trust of all of these men and women who came before us, who believed in things they could not fully see. The chapter ends with a sense of amazement for all the examples we have. We read, what more shall I say? I have no time to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, of David and Samuel and the prophets. What a gift. To have so many people who believed, even without the fullness of revelation the early Christians had in Christ, that we too have. This writer is reminding them, if they could believe, you can too. If they staked their life on this, you can too. And because of them, you will never feel alone in this journey, despite how challenging or tiring it may be at times. I've always been touched by the reference to God as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, for the continual reminder that we do not make our way to God alone. There have been generations who have traveled before us, companions who walk with us, descendants who depend on us to keep going. I love the early church's understanding of the communion of saints as all believers, not just the officially canonized saints so many of us think of today. We are encouraged by the cloud of witnesses. In moments of doubt, I rely on the faith of the people I love and admire. I pray to the God of my mother and father and grandmother, and am reminded that if they held on to belief through the many trials they've gone through, I can too. Perhaps as an Easter reflection, you can write your own story of the faith you have seen in your family history. What have the people in your life been able to do by faith? And what are you being called to do by faith?